Minutes recording. There it is. It just came up.
Good. Okay.
Red dot.
Great.
You're on, Scott.
Very good. So, good morning, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to today's Far West Texas Water Planning Region E Executive Committee meeting. The date is July 23rd. It's 11:30 Central Time, 10:30 Mountain Time. And looks like we have a quorum. I heard that discussion. Yes. So we have a quorum, so I'd like to welcome everybody. So I'm Scott Reinert, the chair of the Region E. And let me just see if we can get people to announce themselves, see how our sound is working. Dave?
Dave Hall, alternate chair.
David Etzold, Executive Committee and Real Estate Representative.
And we've got a couple guests. Will you guys
Yes.
Yes.
go ahead and introduce?
Raquel Ansures, I'm representing El Paso Electric.
Okay.
Daniel Bueno, and I'm a nominee for the Economic Development role vacancy.
Okay. So
And then on.
Yes, and this is the, go ahead.
go ahead, John.
Thank you. John Kennedy, Presidio for the Rural Economic Development nominee, and I apologize that my camera isn't working, and I joined the incorrect Teams link, so I'm glad to be with y'all now. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I see we have Crystal Williams.
Hi, Crystal Williams. I'm a sub-consultant on the technical side with Reason Nichols.
Freeze Nichols.
Okay. And I see Jennifer Jackson.
Yes, good morning, guys. Jennifer Jackson, technical consultant with Carollo.
And I see something that says MCR Surface.
That's us.
Oh.
This is our whole thing.
Okay, that's us.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about an expert with electronics. Okay, so
At least you know where to look to find all those.
looks like we have a quorum and everybody's been introduced. And do we have any public comment? Okay. Hearing none, let's go to recognition of guests and designated alternates. I would like I'm not sure if the virtual world heard our two guests here, so can you restate your name for us? Go ahead.
Raquel Ansures with El Paso Electric as the nominee for electric utilities.
Okay, so we have Raquel from El Paso Electric, a nominee for utilities, and
Daniel Bueno with the Village of Vinton, and nominee for Economic Development role.
okay, Daniel Bueno from Vinton for economic development, right?
Role.
Rural, okay.
And then John is on the system.
And John Kennedy,
For nominee.
who's from Presidio.
Okay. Very good.
He's here virtually.
Alpine.
Yes.
All right.
Presidio.
Presidio.
Presidio. Okay.
Okay, so we're at item 4 here. Review and approve the minutes from the general committee meeting held on April 23rd, 2024. Any comments for these minutes?
Okay, I need to make a correction here. Those minutes need to be tabled until the general membership meeting
Okay,
because they're general membership minutes.
okay,
So we just need to table that until that meeting.
okay. So there is no approval needed now.
Correct.
All right. We have item 5. Discuss and consider action regarding all nominations related to Far West Texas Water Planning Group vacancies for voting members.
Sorry.
Okay, so we had a couple nominees here, right? So are we gonna, we're actually gonna vote for them during the regular meeting, right? Oh, here's the materials.
Here's the materials, yeah.
Yes.
So Mr. Ransom is for the urban economic development.
And he has no competition.
And then we have.
Mr. Landeros is the other one. coming from that same county office.
And then here's Danielle's the letter of recommendation, and then his letter of interest, and then his resume.
Okay.
And that's for rural economic development.
Got a U-tip minor there. Okay. All right. So it looks like we have interested nominees. And so we're, as executives, get to see them now. And then in the regular meeting, we approve them, we vote them in. Is that?
I guess doesn't the executive committee recommend to the general?
A slate of nominees.
A slate of them, and then, so I guess you
So
all
I guess,
discuss them now.
If we have a motion, is that what we're looking for? A motion to?
Let's have discussion first.
Okay.
Scott.
Yes.
Okay, so does anybody on the committee, executive committee, know anything about this Office of Economic Development at the County of El Paso? Is there anyone that could speak to that?
I don't know anything about it,
Two
Dave.
of the nominees are coming from that same office, it looks like.
The only one we see is Landeros.
No,
And
Landeros and Robert
Oh, Ransom.
Ransom.
Oh, they're both from the
Come from
same
that
office.
same office. I'd just like to have some open conversation about having two voting members from the same institutional office. It's a little complicated because Mr. Landeros and Mr. Ransom don't have any competition in the nomination, but it looks like we're potentially going to get stacked with a couple of voting members.
I had wondered that same thing.
Teresa, you saw that?
Yes, yes, and no disrespect to either of the nominees, but I had noticed the same thing, especially since, they were in the packet. It was like one right after the other, and I was like, hey, wait a second, these are different people. But
Well,
from the same
and
agency.
they also nominated each other.
Yeah, I saw that too. I did notice that.
Okay, and so not to dwell on any conspiracy theories, because I'm not one, a conspiratist, but
You may be able to answer the question that just came up. Both Landeros and Ransom are from Economic Development El Paso,
County of El Paso,
County of El
County of
Paso.
El Paso.
Two different
Is there any
departments.
issue with
same department.
No,
with
two
having
different
both of
departments.
them
No,
fill
Landeros
positions?
is the mobility strategic director, and Ransom is the economic development director.
Right, but is there any issue with having them both become representatives of different areas within the water planning group
We don't have anything outlined in the bylaws that would be.
that precludes that?
Mhm.
No, I'm not saying that it's against our bylaws.
I understand.
Okay,
I know where you're coming from.
Do you?
You have enough?
Because
I-
there's a motivation here somewhere to put two people on the committee
We'll make-
from the same county office, and one of them has a background with the Hunt organization. And I have always just been a little suspicious of the battle royale 20 years ago when I was put on this committee,
Yeah.
when Hunt wanted a representative and Mr. Archuleta pushed my nomination over the nomination of Hunt. So I'm just sharing that with the committee and with the public because it's a possibility and we don't have those men available to discuss this with.
They're
But
not.
honestly, the signature lines on the
Neither
two
one.
recommendation letters seem to come from the same department. Economic Development Department and, Office of Strategic and Capital Development. I don't know the distinction between the two. They both have great skill sets and experience.
Yeah. We might suggest one opening and one serve as an alternate to the other. That's kind of what I might offer.
Scott, that's a great idea.
Great
Well,
idea.
guys, also remember that we've got 20 voting members. I mean.
I know it doesn't
and
constitute.
Two more would be
a swing of any kind.
Wouldn't cause any kind of a swing, even if both of them, teamed up for leverage. Go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, no, I like Scott's idea.
Oh, okay. Or Dave's idea, you mean? I don't personally have any issue with
Okay.
it. As long as they actively stay within their areas. In one's tourism, we definitely need those areas represented.
I have a question. I know we have some of the candidates here. Were the candidates invited to come, or were they requested to come for the meeting?
Everyone was requested and invited.
They were invited, Teresa.
For the
For this
general
purpose.
meeting.
So we might be able to talk to these guys at the general meeting later this afternoon.
Well, we invited them to this too, though.
They were
For the-
asked to be present at the general meeting, then I would think that these are some questions that, they could respond to at that time.
Well, I would say this, Mr. Ladderos has a great background in urban planning and transportation planning. And I like that because we don't have anyone on our group that has that background. And then again, Mr. Ransom has a connection to Santa Teresa and the New Mexico authorities. And I find that intriguing too, because our water comes from there, or at least part of it does. So I agree with you, Dave. It's not going to constitute any sort of shifted votes, but it just was curious, and I thought I'd bring it up to the committee.
So I would just offer my opinion that I think we've struggled as a group to have positions filled. And if they are expressing an interest and they have qualifications that are needed in our organization and a diversity, I support them. And now it's kind of curious to see if they will actually show up and participate in our process. So I think they can actually, both of them probably help our process if they participate, add comment. We're always wondering what the county feels about this. And I think maybe not to throw Jennifer in, but we haven't had much county engagement in any of these meetings over the years. So, and I sometimes get asked at El Paso Water, what is the county doing? And this might be able to help us in our plan explain what is the county doing, or do they not have anything to say? It's all about what El Paso Water is doing. So I generally support them because I think we've struggled to have members and filling up our group.
It's a good point.
Okay, so our single candidates for tourism, economic development, and electric generating, we don't have issues with.
Thank you.
I do think we need to talk about the three candidates, so for economic development. And
Do we think, should we have Mr. Bueno excuse himself while we discuss his nomination?
well, we've got Kennedy on
Virtual as well,
too.
both.
So, yeah, I don't have any issue with, it's up to you, Dave, if you think they ought to.
Well, it's kind of like, talking about who you're going to pick for Miss America. You don't want her to know, right? Right off the bat.
I don't have any problem making my comments so that they can address them if they need to. Yeah, I'm not, it's not an issue.
You have some questions?
Go ahead.
I'd like to hear from each of them briefly, just an introduction, and just why they want to be on the water planning group before we do that.
Okay, Daniel, you're here. You want to do yours first?
I like that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to the committee and the chair.
Speak up.
My name is Daniel Bueno. I actually am currently employed with the Village of Vinton as its Community and Economic Development Coordinator. When I first started at that municipality, 2,600 in population, I inherited a plethora of issues. But thankfully, the city was successful in securing $34 million in federal and state revenue, or grants in this case, for first-time water and sewer development and connections. In conjunction, we also teamed up with the El Paso Water Utilities to provide the maintenance and operations of the utility. So for the past 5 years, we've successfully created and expanded our water and sewer system and connecting approximately 506 first-time water and sewer connections. I've been the one managing the utility, again, in conjunction with El Paso Water. And one of the things that I'm very proactive about is that Vinton is spearheading movement in the Upper Valley region of El Paso County. So it hasn't just been our municipality benefiting from this project, but also the 5 surrounding colonias, which, as you guys may know, as of the 1986 memorandum from the Housing and Urban Development Administration, these are neighborhoods, unincorporated neighborhoods that don't have really access to a lot of basic quality of life infrastructure such as water, sewer, or in general, they are very dilapidated or blighted communities. And because of our project and us running water and sewer mains, we've actually allowed them and being able to successfully connect these colonias as well. We're currently teaming up as well with the town of Anthony to currently and further expand their development. And to tie it back to economic development, we've been able to strategically, as part of our 2035 master plan of Vinton, spur and spearhead commercial development along these areas that have been able to bring high quality retention jobs and increase the tax base and help us expand in general as a community and bring basic quality of life necessities to our communities.
Wow. So I would like to applaud that explanation on several accounts. First of all, I don't know if you can see in virtual world, but he's well dressed. He's got a nice and
Puts us all to shame.
And Jennifer can tell us that it's been like pulling teeth to get any information out of Vinton in our state water plan. So I think that's a plus. And then he used the word plethora. So I think it's I think he hit a home run here. And actually, I think it's he was very well spoken. And I've met him before. He seems to have a passion for water supply, and I think that's a good, important thing for this planning group. I think he'll be an asset to our group.
Wasn't there a formal agreement reached between the village of Vinton and the water utility to provide you with the water that was needed to service the community?
Correct. So
And when was that?
I'm sorry?
When did that occur?
This was in 2018, and then it has been amended since then as of 2020.
There's a term for that, Scott. What's the name of it's
called a water purchase agreement. And then in conjunction with that, they also treat our sewer now that we have sewer.
Mhm.
So it's 4 sets of documents that we have with them. Water purchase agreement, sewage treatment agreement, and then maintenance and operations. Since we still are a small municipality and wouldn't be able to house in staff a water sewer department, we work with El Paso Water to do that.
share the cost of it.
And I see another benefit of Daniel being part of this is that when we talk about underrepresented colonias, he might have some insights, because I think this plan is meant for the betterment of our whole region and in getting water service that they need. And Jennifer has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, so Daniel, thank you for that amazing introduction, and not to get out in front of the planning group members, but if approved to fulfill that slot, Peggy, would it be possible to get his contact information out to me, email, phone number, things of that nature? Because we do have a Colonia section in our regional water plan, and I would love to be able to connect with Daniel if voted onto the group, and really kind of update that section based on what I just heard today. There are also some places where we talk about Vinton and the town of Anthony that I think he could be really critical in getting our content and our regional water plan updated.
Well said.
Yes.
I applaud. That's right.
Thank you.
If I may, to the chair.
Yes.
Regardless of the committee's decision, I would still like for you to reach out. It is my passion and intent to help the Upper Valley and in general, any displaced communities within our region.
Well, thank you. That sounds like we got a good help on the Colonia section of your report, Jennifer.
Okay.
How about Mr. Kennedy? Can he make a
Mr.
statement?
Kennedy.
Also, Roberto Ransom's trying to get in.
Okay.
So I'll try to get in.
Howdy. Well, I regret that I'm sparing y'all my smiling face with this hardware issue, but I'd like to just briefly introduce myself and thank y'all for your consideration. I have a a wide background in policy and urban planning in Washington, D.C., Austin, and then I moved out to Alpine 6 years ago, and I've now found myself in Presidio this year, and working closely with the city and the county. And water is part of what we're doing, but I'm preparing an entire economic development plan under a Texas Department of Agriculture grant, and it's for community resiliency as well. We're also spearheading a green infrastructure project with the help of the North American Development Bank in Presidio County. And I actually just was in a meeting this morning with the governor's office as well as our county judge, trying to put all this together and move things forward. But you might imagine that in Presidio, there's lots of challenges. I'm working closely with the city administrator to put together grant money and planning funds to have a water infrastructure and wastewater infrastructure program for the city of Presidio, where there's been challenges. So I've been getting with Trey Gerfers on a lot of this, who you all are familiar with. And so him and Peggy had encouraged me to look into this group, and I'm very interested in the Water Development Board. And in fact, I actually worked with the City of Alpine Water Utility. So I've had a wide range of experience, and I'm a land surveyor now as well, and I'm actually dipping back into the policy and planning, and there's a lot of need here. And for me, we can really make a difference out here. So that's the main reason why I'm back doing this, to actually make a difference where it counts in the poorest county in Texas, where we need it the most. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but I'm newer to the water world. I was more of a transportation guy. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any other questions for John's comments?
I was curious, you're living in Presidio or you're living in Alpine, John?
Yes, I'm now in Presidio the last 6 months and was in Alpine for the last 6 years.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in Presidio. We haven't had much of a report about that part of the state and the region. Population growth, diminishment, what's happening with the economy there?
Yes, we're seeing some changes with Mexico actually has designated Ojinaga as one of their designated ports for the Transmigrantes, and that's creating a new flow of traffic coming in, where folks are bringing in vehicles and such to go all the way to South America in some cases, Central America in many cases. And so there's a lot of trade happening. There's a lot of agricultural trade. As far as locally in Presidio, there is some stagnation, and there's challenges. One of the things we're focusing on is the city has identified an industrial park area, but we need to actually develop the water infrastructure, for instance. Or they annexed an area east of town that was more of a colonia, and now they need to provide the wastewater. So there's a basic need for infrastructure. We've been getting with the Water Finance Exchange guys, who have been really great. And Trey has actually gone and done something wonderful, which is scoring a lot of these EDAP funds and other grants for Presidio County. And now we're bringing and funds into these really small, like much smaller than Presidio, even these little places like Candelaria and Redford. And we're setting up little utility boards with them. And so I'm getting involved with that too. But the future in Presidio, it's actually really bright. It's interesting because we have this rail connection that's coming back online. We have geothermal energy, which we've had a study. You all might have seen that there's so much potential for geothermal energy right here. It's actually very viable. You don't have to drill as far, and you hit really hot rock. And so we want to build around agriculture. We're in talks with Village Farms and some of these other big agricultural players to bring in agriculture processing. We want to have cold storage, potentially transshipment between rail and truck. And we just need the infrastructure to have all this happen, because the story with Presidio has always been that you can't really get anything done here. So working closely with the judge and the other leaders here, we want to lay the foundation for that. So that's essentially, it's a big challenge, but I think we're poised to really take off, especially because when you consider all of the other port traffic on the border, we're not as congested. So we have a lot of room for growth. And essentially, that's really where we're going to be poised for growth in terms of trade. But also we have this workforce and a big labor, we don't have a labor shortage here at all. We have a very rich pool of labor here in Onaga and Presidio. And we want to bring back that agricultural heritage. And we have the good water here, and we need to manage it well. And really just build out the basic stuff as far as infrastructure.
Scott, I have a follow-up question.
Yes. Okay.
So John, you just mentioned water, which is a great segue. What is the status of the sources of water in Presidio and the future sources that you're anticipating?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very interesting discussion out here in the Big Bend in general. You know, we have the igneous aquifer, which is Alpine and Marfa and a lot of these areas, and working closely with Dr. Kevin Urbanzik and others to try to figure out that source better. But down here, we even have a less known aquifer that's, I believe, a balsam aquifer. And part of what's needed is a further study and data collection. And some of this geothermal probing, I'd imagine, would have to go hand in hand with that. But it's good water as far as I understand. And there hasn't really, the city tells me that the water levels haven't been dropping for them at their well, but you know, it's a small town we have 3,500 on the census. It might be more like 5,000 or 6,000 depending on undocumented, but the water infrastructure is a bit on a shoestring, and there's only a handful of wells that produce it all. And we've installed some new infrastructure for high pressure, elevated storage and distribution. But as far as the actual water quality, it is good. And the other issue, though, is that the agriculture, of course, and all of the ground drilling. So I think there'd be a lot of potential to do further study and to get the data. And I know Trey is really pushing for that. So we'd like to do it right as far as having an actual infrastructure plan for water, wastewater, but also storm water. And so that's a key function that's now going to be with our green infrastructure program, where we're actually building on a 2008 study that was done by the border. There was a border cooperative, and they identified 15 outflow channels to the Rio, where basically whenever it rains, we have all that water running through town, and we're going to be planting trees, doing bioswales in a lot of these dirt roads, and capturing that water, slowing it down, and putting it to use. So basically, we're seeing it as three functions, of course: water, wastewater, and stormwater.
Is your water sourced from the Rio Grande as well as from the wells in the area?
No, it's just the groundwater. And so the flow of the Rio here has been fairly intermittent. It depends. Of course, we have the Conchos coming in, which provides most of it. And we've gotten a little bit of rain the last few weeks, so it's nice to see that come up. But we're on groundwater, essentially.
Okay.
Since I'm a water guy, I thought I would follow up with David's question. Is the ag supported there from the river flow, or is it from groundwater pumping?
It's all, well, there is some actually coming off the river, and also more and more groundwater now with the river being lowered.
Okay.
Yeah, the water table is down some, but historically there were all these canals coming off of the Rio.
Okay. So if there's not enough river flow, you have wells to complement the lack of river.
Exactly, and of course there's major agriculture on the Mexican side as well, and not as much coordination.
Jennifer, do we have a water user group down there in that Presidio area that we've worked with? Jennifer?
Okay. Yep. So we have coordinated with the city of Presidio. I'd have to pull up the gentleman's name exactly, but I know that we've had some good survey responses and phone calls with Presidio. In addition to that, I was just going to add the comment, well, I've got a couple. John, based on the planning group's decision today, if part of the team, we are in the middle of trying to solicit individuals connected to these projects and the sponsors to the projects in the 2021 plan and asking for help to update what you foresee, has changed in the last 5 years. Are there any other projects? And it sounds to me like what you're describing, there's some big ideas about what may need to happen in the city of Presidio, both near term and long term. And I think we don't have that represented well in our plan as of right now. What I do have is an additional groundwater well in the West Texas Bolson. And I think you were mentioning, the Bolson aquifer. That has been in our plan for a couple of different cycles now. So what I'd like to do is coordinate with whomever I can there at the city of Presidio and really work hand in hand to update what strategies you think you're needing for that near-term growth. If it's infrastructure related, we can add it to the plan. I don't know if it fits exactly in our 5A section. And when you mentioned stormwater, I don't know if you're aware, but there is a flood planning group, and you can connect with Annette and Peggy on this after the meeting, but there is a state flood planning team that would probably be very interested in your vision for capturing stormwater and the reuse there. So just a couple of ideas as I was listening to your introduction. Thank you for that detailed introduction. That really helps me as a consultant kind of understand better what's going on there at the city of Presidio.
Okay, great. And I'll also mention working closely with the Presidio Municipal Development District, which is sales tax funded economic development group. So there's just a lot. It's a lot to take on at once. You could say drinking from the fire hose if we're going to stay with the water, but I'm just getting started with all this work, and I would be more than happy to plug in and assist wherever I can.
Very good. Well, thank you, John. Peggy, do we have Ransom from?
He hasn't been able to get on, but he said in text that he's very interested and he had a hard stop at 11, so he probably wasn't able to come
Okay, so he's
for the rest of it.
timed out, but perhaps we'll get to hear from him this afternoon.
Hopefully, when we wrap up, I'll try and get a hold of him
Okay.
again.
So we've heard discussion from two of our applicants. Mr. Ransom was not available. He wanted to. He had a timing issue. So perhaps we'll hear from him at our regular meeting this afternoon. And now.
Mr. Londos is on the line. It says on the line.
Oh, okay.
If do you want to check? Let me see if he. Let me see.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm here. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Jose, thank you. Yes, and I'll get Mr. Black on the phone. He's having trouble connecting. Okay. Okay.
Jose, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, good morning. Thank you all. And I do sincerely apologize that I'm not on camera. I've taken a sick day because I have a toddler that's been running around for about a week with a stomach virus, and so any moment can be near fatal, near miss, right? So I'm a little bit on standby, but I did want to thank the board for the consideration. I've had the opportunity to interact with the planning group as an alternate member to a former county commissioner, Vince Bettis, who served precinct 3 of El Paso County before, and so water planning is the lifeline of a lot of what any local government can do with respect to things like tourism or economic development. And so we saw this really closely with the recent conversation that we've been having with Meta, the social media company who'll be placing a large data center in Northeast El Paso. it's good for the economy, but we also recognize that data centers have very high utility needs, whether that be electric generation or in this case, technology to cool their servers, which means water. And so as we continue to kind of develop our strategies, I think that it's important for the county to continue to be, you know, involved in the water planning process to talk about future demands and opportunities. And so in my role, which is probably what I should have started off with, I'm currently in the county administration department for El Paso. And so we work directly for Commissioner's Court in overseeing a lot of our the court's policies and priorities and strategic vision. Specifically, I work in the areas of economic development and capital planning. And so that has been my forte in recent years. Prior to that, I served as the county's director of planning, where we dealt with a lot of first-time water and wastewater projects with a lot of the utility providers throughout the community. And so the interest that I have in serving on this group again really stems from what I opened up with, is making sure that there's a strong connection between water planning efforts and our organizational efforts to attract business, commerce, and tourism to the region. So I don't know if there's any questions that you all might specifically have, but I'd be happy to answer them as best I can this morning.
I don't know anything about Black, though. We haven't heard anything from him.
I don't either. But
So,
where he's from, he's from.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to get
Well, thank you, Jose.
Or-
Sounds like you have some background and experience in El Paso and economic development and topics for the county. So I think there's always a good chapter in our discussion. And I think it'll broaden our discussion. I think Jennifer's nodding her head, so that's good. Do we have
Thomas Black.
Thomas?
Our bylaws to.
You haven't, have you spoken yet?
No, I haven't.
No, okay.
I've talked a lot, but I haven't introduced.
Okay, okay.
There.
Um,
I'm gonna put you on speakerphone so that you can speak with the group, okay? Okay, can you hear Mr. Black?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I
And
can
do you
hear
wanna-
you. Just me.
Okay,
This is Thomas Black,
Thomas Black.
and
Yes.
Can we tell them that
and I don't know if the group can hear.
I don't know.
at the general meeting?
Can everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Crystal and Jennifer and John
I'm
and
good with that.
Teresa? Can you hear Mr. Black?
Yeah, if the
Yeah.
room gets real quiet, we can.
Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Black. See if they can hear you.
I'll make sure I speak loudly into the speaker. That'll help.
Okay. I think Peggy's making your voice louder.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So, yes, I had put in, I had shown interest in the position. A few things about me. I was born in Isleta, from El Paso my entire life. Graduated Clinton High School, went to college, married my high school sweetheart. We moved to San Elizario about 6 years. I have 5 kids, happy family. Been part of Socorro, Clint, San Elizario area for the vast majority of my life. And actually, I even have family in Alpine. We used to spend significant time out there. I currently serve city council in my community, Older Person Place number 5. I work with Union Pacific Railroad. I'm a conductor/engineer out here, and I'm interested in helping out any way I can the community. I was referred to by Mr. Gonzalez's staff. I've talked to him a few times about some of our issues in our community, and he thought this might be something for me to look into. So therefore, that's why I sent my request to Ms. Gutierrez there.
Okay. Okay, so I see Thomas's Black, his info on the screen here. And do we have any questions for Mr. Black? I think he adds a presence to our lower valley that I know working with Jennifer the last few plans, sometimes we try, and I'm just kind of speaking freely that I don't know if we feel like we really met the mark in representing the lower valley, the San Elizarios, the Socorros. We've tried, but always getting a contact down there that's interested, knowledgeable about our process, our timing, our meetings, I think is always a positive, because I think at the end of the day, this planning process leads to a document that the state and the borderland can look at and say, and trust that it's accurate, that it's updated, it's current. And so that's what I think is a good thing about Mr. Black. Any other questions for Mr. Black?
Which railroad did you work for, Mr. Black?
So I currently work with Union Pacific Railroad.
UP. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, looks like the screen is getting ready for our next discussion. That helps us. Okay. Okay, we have, this is for Raquel. There she is. Let me get your oh, there it is. Raquel Onciores.
Yes.
It's right here behind you.
Yes. So Raquel's going to speak on her letter here. Go ahead, Raquel.
Good morning. I'm Raquel Onsudes again with El Paso Electric. I currently work as a plant chemistry supervisor for the power
Be as
plant.
loud as you can.
Okay. And so I work as a plant chemistry supervisor for all power generation. And now we're named energy supply. So my main task right now is to coordinate with the labs and operators at each of the power plants to be able to provide the quality of water that we need for not only like DI water for power generation, but also for cooling purposes, which doesn't require as the best water, right? So as far as being part of the water planning group, I wasn't aware that the utilities had a part in it necessarily, but now being at El Paso Electric for 3 years and learning what exactly the power plants do and what the role is on the water chemistry and the water consumption side is, I feel like it's sometimes not or overlooked by the electric utility. Nothing is said about water until we're run out of it, right? And so then that means we don't have generation. And so as far as being part of this group, I appreciate the time to be able to not only have me here at the meeting, but also consider me as a nominee. Just because in the past 3 years that I've been there, we've seen a lot of political situations where it has to do with a lot of the power plants and power generation, specifically related to water. I'm sure El Paso Water and El Paso Electric had conversations during one of the most political times last year when it came to fossil fuel industries. And so we can't, as far as providing power to the community, we cannot operate not just without water, but also without fossil fuels. And so we do have decarbonization goals, we have electrification goals that affects a community specifically, and it will take a lot of buy-in from the community. I personally am not exactly sure how the electric utility is involved with economic development and the water planning group, but I do know that it affects and it impacts the community greatly. I did grow up in Montana Vista, born and raised in El Paso, grew up in Montana Vista, so I heard of all the issues, the complaints, and my family was very involved in those type of conversations, but I just never understood. And now being part of the electric utility, I feel like I can have some kind of impact. I'm happy to be back home. I'm happy to be part of an electric utility that provides a service for the community. And now being a part of this water planning group, I think would benefit greatly, not only to create that conduit between the electric utility and the water planning group, but also be able to educate people on our side, on the EPE side, El Paso Electric side, to work better together, understand where we're going as a community, as a city, and what opportunities are out there. Jose mentioned Meta, and so that's a popular topic at El Paso Electric right now because they are requiring solar power, and so our solar team is focused on being able to provide that in the next few years. And so now I see the direct correlation between power generation and or the electric utility in general with economic development. And so I know for a fact that there are other companies that want to come to El Paso. And so we're expanding greatly, very, very quickly, and that impacts how fast we can create power to provide to these companies. And so that is a large consideration at the time that they're deciding whether they're coming here, as well as water, the water usage, right, that they are required to operate their companies. And so I think it'll be exciting to be not only learn about what the water planning group is doing, what economic development is doing, and be able to provide the feedback to our company about that. So thank you again for having me. I'm open to any questions if I missed anything.
Is it okay if I say something? I don't know
Yes.
the committee, but because tying Presidio in with this too, even though El Paso Electric isn't in Presidio per se, I mean, all of this technology that you're talking about and what John's talking about, you know, all of the economic development and the renewable energy and the geothermal and all of that. I mean, it just seems like there's so much synergy that can happen.
Right.
Is Presidio within your service area?
It is, no, we go up to Van Horn.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But still conceptually and just collaboratively
engineering-wise.
speaking, engineering-wise, yeah.
Right, and I think we all struggle, right? I went to maybe one conference that was mainly targeted on water, not necessarily electric, which is what I understand a little bit more. But it seems like everybody's going through some kind of transition, right? And we're going what we call the energy transition, trying to meet all these goals, and it seems impossible at times, right? The electrification, the solar, the wind. We own almost 16% of Palo Verde, so we have nuclear within our portfolio. So we do have goals that we are meeting, but it just seems like the technologies are just, and the cost, right? Because it comes at a cost. We're not being able, it seems like we're at the edge, you know, everybody's at the edge of trying to make it. And so I feel like any technology that's working out there that we can become familiar with, that's working for their communities, maybe we can implement within our own company. We are working on our water consumption efforts. We do have a zero liquid discharge that I am a PM for right now, trying to eliminate our wastewater. There are outside projects that are impacting that specific project. And so being able to be a standalone company or standalone within our facility to reuse as much as possible so we are not wasting anything is important to the company right now. So that's one of the main water projects as a company that we're working on. We work directly with El Paso Water as far as well water consumption, and we do get some city water at some of our power plants. And then we do discharge to the Rio Grande for our New Mexico plant, which is Rio Grande. And so we are impacted by all the regulations, all the permitting, all the agreements that possibly the water planning group has heard of, right? And so I think it would be beneficial to become more familiar on what part we play and what I can learn from the planning group.
Thank you, Raquel. It looks like Jennifer has her hand up.
Yes,
Jennifer?
thank you, Raquel. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So quick question for you. My contact with the El Paso Steam Electric has been Jessica Christensen. Do you know if she's still there, or, you know, if I were to ask for some help in updating sections of our regional water plan, because Steam Electric only occurs in El Paso County in Region E, and so we speak to it quite often in our plan, and our plan is only as good as the input that I can receive. So I'm very excited to know that there's potential to connect with, you know, additional folks in helping to make some of those revisions. Is she still with the company, or?
She is. She's actually moved on to bigger and better things. So she's the VP of, I forget the entire title, but like our sustainability and renewable group. So she's working a lot on the electrical EV, solar projects. But I know that I can reach out to her openly and she'll be able to share any information that you might need. I also believe there's other individuals within the company that took on some of her roles on the environmental side, maybe not necessarily water planning, but definitely familiar with information that you might need.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at, and I'm a little excited, is we've actually not had anyone with our regional water planning group representing Steam Electric. And it's just been a contact of mine through maybe Scott in previous plans, but I don't know if I've ever recalled Jessica attending any of our meetings. So if the planning group approves you onto the group, it's exciting to me that we would have some kind of bridge to connect me to, your company and areas of our plan where we definitely want to represent accurately how that impacts water in Region E, how that impacts water in El Paso County, things of that nature.
Of course, that would be, if I can't provide that information, I definitely will, I'll get a contact for that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, so we talk about the energy water nexus, and energy needs water and water needs energy. And I think our state water plan has kind of been lacking some of the exciting details that the electric company has for their future, zero liquid discharge, because if our plan is to be accurate, you look at electric and being a big water user, how do they use water? What's their future? And so perhaps we could use this to make our plan more accurate. So I think that's exciting, like Jennifer said. Any other comments for Raquel? Okay. We've had good discussion today on interested nominees. So
And thanks to all of them.
Yes, thank you for attending.
I thought we were dwindling for years, and all of a sudden we've got all this interest in us. What happened?
We shook the trees.
Okay.
Trees, that's right.
So do we have any further discussion on any other nominees that we haven't covered?
Don't think so. I think everybody chimed in. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
We have Daniel, John, Mr. Ransom,
You guys are planning.
Thomas Black, and Raquel.
Great. Can we have Roberto? I've invited him, Mr. Ransom, to come.
Oh, Ransom will speak later.
Later. Hopefully
Okay.
he can come.
All
And then
right.
I've asked Heather and Elizabeth at TWDB whether we can do 2 rural economic development spots and have 2 share that 1 for urban, right? That's what you wanted to do, or that was what you're thinking about.
Just so you know, I went in and talked to Annette.
Oh.
Annette said we've advertised for 1 person. Okay, so
Okay.
probably what I will propose later on in the general membership meeting, and I can bring it up here, is that we pick 1 person out of the 3 that have been nominated for 1 position and choose that person, and then open the door get the general membership to approve 2 more positions under rural economic development. Rural, is that the area I wanted?
Yes.
Okay, and where the 3 positions are, and if the general membership approves 2 more positions, then we'll advertise for those 2 positions, and people that were not selected this time can reapply for those 2 positions and come into the system.
Okay.
As voting members. So that's what we can do legally according to the bylaws.
Gotcha.
But
So
at this
one
point,
on
at
each.
this point, we have to pick 1 of the 3 to fill the vacant, the
There are
advertised
4.
position.
There are 4. Because
No,
there's two urban, there's Mr.
No,
Ransom and
we've
Mr.
only got 1 nominee for the urban.
No, I thought it was Mr. Linderos and Mr. Ransom.
No,
They're both.
one's tourism.
Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. Very sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we have,
So, no, Dave's got it down.
Okay.
He's got
sorry,
it
you
covered.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea, Dave.
yeah, I think the more representative we have of the rural area, the better off we are. And even though they're not that far from El Paso, they're still out and away from the city.
They have different experiences than
And
the urban.
different needs
Yeah.
and different experiences,
Yeah.
and I think it's useful to try to bring them in.
The thing that I like too is that they're each from different geographical areas that we've not really had a lot of representation in before. So I think that would be helpful to the plan, and it sounds like it would also be really helpful to Jennifer.
Agreed, yeah. So I think that's the route that I'll kind of brief in the general membership meeting and see if everybody agrees, and if they do, we'll process that. Okay.
Looks like we got a lot of really good applicants. I mean,
I think so.
Yeah,
super
we want,
impressed talent pool.
Right,
And we want to take advantage of that too.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We don't want to turn away good people.
I hear you, especially when they're interested.
Okay, so we're on item 6 now.
So, 6, you're right. I'm sorry.
Item 6,
What a
Uh,
report.
report from Carollo.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Item 6, report from Carollo on the schedule of regional water planning.
Yep. So I'm not sure how much time we want to give these next 3 agenda items since they're going to be identical in the general meeting. And it's not like we have anything today that needs to be voted on. This is just open discussion. You guys were given the packets well in advance of the meeting. They were posted. And in that packet is our red line draft chapter 1 and our red line draft chapter 2. So we are on schedule. If I was to speak to agenda item 6, we've caught up with our transition from WSP to Carollo. We submitted, I mean, it was quite the effort, but we all hung in there and as a team. Yes. Yes, I'm very excited that we actually didn't lose, much ground, and the regions that I work with here at Carollo, they're only 1 meeting ahead of us. Not a big deal, so I'm very excited to report that we've submitted our technical memorandum. We got feedback from the Water Development Board on those comments. I presented those comments at the last meeting. We also submitted our task 5B notice to proceed, which, as we discussed at the last meeting, the board scope is pretty vague when you get to task 5B. It allows for the planning group members and their technical consultants to kind of dictate how that water management strategy development fund is going to be broken down. I did a presentation on how many strategies we have in groundwater, how many we have with ASR and reuse and conservation. And I did a high level estimate on what our buckets, funding wise would be for each of those categories. That got submitted to the Water Development Board. The Water Development Board provided back their comment. They approved our task 5B with a couple of comments. One was we had lumped in groundwater and ASR together. They wanted me to break it out. No big deal. And one is that they've added some language to the other strategy bucket, meaning every time you come around to do an update on the plan, you're not only looking at what was in the plan in the previous cycle, but you're asking entities like, Vinton and Presidio, whom we've heard today, whether there's new strategies, new water projects that need to come online. So all that to say is we've been given the green light from the Water Development Board to proceed with our timeline. So, yep, Peggy, if you scroll down, you've seen this schedule from the board each meeting. The red circle's kind of where we're sitting at, with the scope items being that water management strategy development. So that's where we're going to start to heavily survey the sponsors to our existing projects and all the WUG to ensure that we're capturing the newest and greatest information on those strategies and if there's any new strategies coming online. This will be a lengthy process. We'll have multiple meetings, where we talk about what are the strategies that, each entity is coming up with, discussion around that, so on and so forth. From there, for the purpose of this meeting, it's really just to kind of review the draft chapter. So I don't know if anybody's had time to do that, but that's kind of what our topic is going to be today. Is they're out there. I know Peggy and Annette have posted our red lines. Your homework assignment per se is to read it over and then connect with me if you think there's updates that need to happen, different revisions that need to occur. Right now, I'm kind of managing a master copy of each chapter, and any input that I'm getting back from the different entities and y'all as a group, I'll go in and modify our master copy as appropriate so that we get to a final that the group can review at a later time. So the presentation is just going to take, there's 13 chapters, 13 sections in chapter 1. And I just kind of did a high level, Peggy, if I go ahead and take control Let me see if that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Or you can, if you want me to go to a certain page, but I think it's easier if you do it, Jennifer.
Okay. Let me see. It's acting like.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
It's wanting
looks like
to.
something wants to happen.
Okay.
It's
What
not
about-
there yet.
Okay. Let me see. Well, I'll leave it for 2 seconds. If not, let me cancel the sharing and I'll reshare and see if it comes in.
Nothing's showing.
Okay, so let me stop. Ask it to reshare. Okay, I think maybe this is better.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So what I'll be presenting at the general meeting is just high level information on what each chapter 1 and chapter 2 kind of entail. Like I said, chapter 1 is divided into these 13 sections. It's a lengthy chapter because chapter 1 is a summary of every chapter in our water plan. So if you were just wanting like a quick, executive summary on the plan, chapter 1 tries to capture, a little bit about each chapter in our water plan. So I've put together some slides, kind of high-level information on what we talk about inside each of those sections. One thing I will draw your attention to that is new this time is I updated figure 1-8, and let me just slide our red line around so that this is sharing. So you can see we've got our red lines in here where we've connected with different entities and getting some feedback in to make sure that our plan is being updated accordingly. I know you guys maybe should have taken your Dramamine. Hold on 2 seconds. Okay, one of the areas that I spent a great deal of time on is we have this section regarding land use and climate. And I got in here and I started to read our climate data. And I really felt like this was old. And sure enough, as I dug deeper and I went to the NOAA information site and looked up historical, precipitation data for weather stations within the county, I did realize that this hadn't been updated. So I took the time to go in and put some new information. One, I've bulleted out, which weather station I got the data in each of the counties. Now, these counties and those weather stations, for the most part, had been represented in previous plans. So, not a lot of new information there other than you can see a shift in our total precipitation for the region and by county by the fact that when I updated it, it was the past 31 years. We've had some drier seasons impact that 31-year data set. What I added, though, that I think is kind of neat is in addition to the bullets of saying, hey, in Brewster County, this was the weather station that, I had to pull data from, I actually gave you the table of what that information is. And this information helps to develop that figure 1-8. So, as a reader coming into our regional water plan, there's places where it's important to back up a conversation around a topic, say for this, situation, it's climate, historical climatic data regarding, monthly rainfall for certain weather stations in certain counties. And in the past plan, it was like we kind of had to just trust, that data had been collected correctly and the figure that is generated off of that data reflects that data correctly. In this plan, I thought it might be a nice addition to include the table that says, hey, that figure 1-8 is actually derived from this weather data for each county. So I've put in that historical 31, data set by county, by weather station. And that way the reader has something that they can refer back to.
I like it.
And yeah, I did too. And then that updates our old table, which has this red line, to our new table. So there should be no confusion with regard to how this figure was developed, because you can refer back to those tables for any, kind of geeky scientist who likes to dive a little deeper into that information. In addition to that update, the one other thing of notice right now is where we talk about our water loss audit. I was hoping we would have TDEP kind of sitting with us during this executive committee, but I'll speak to it to the best of my ability. AWWA, which comes out with the guidance around how do we look at water loss, and you'll notice, in our list of regional water management strategies, we have a lot of water loss audit and mainline repair type strategies. Well, the past guidance had been if there was a 10% or greater leak or loss in that infrastructure, then we were required to come up with a strategy. What I discovered when I was coming in here to update our water loss audit section is that the data that the board was giving consultants didn't look the same as it did in the previous cycle. And when I was comparing them, I had a lot of questions around this water loss audit 10% and how we're to develop strategies, And so I connected with the Water Development Board and sat in on a workshop with the Water Loss Audit Department and Heather and others so that I could just ask my questions and have them help explain, what the new guidance is. And what I stumbled across is we were the first region to come in and say, hey, you've changed the guidance around water loss, no longer looking at a percentage, as like the cutoff. So what does a consultant look at when they're trying to determine what is too much of a leak in, an infrastructure or pipeline, where we jump in and say, okay, now there needs to be a strategy developed. And I had them kind of stumped. So they had to take away some of my questions and have an internal meeting, and then came back to me with a short email with several links that are rather lengthy as to what the new AWWA, guidance is, and it's not percentage based. So to be fully transparent, that happened late last week, early this week, and so I haven't yet been able to dive into that and do an update with our water loss audit section, but I don't feel too bad because we were the planning group that came to them and said, either, you missed sending out new guidance because the methodology there changed, or you thought somehow we would know what that ought to be as consultants. But either way, each consultant within those 16 regions need to have some kind of guidance. So they worked up a plan. Yes, Teresa?
What's the new trigger?
Very, very complicated. And I'm
Oh,
going to
okay.
need, I'm going to need their support.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I
It's
just wondered
for-
if it's not 10%, which is easy. So they made
Yes.
something that was easy hard.
Yes, they did. And it takes into consideration 4 different components in their distribution and leak detection. And it's one of those things where if in these 2 components you sit in this margin and that matches the margin of these 2 components, then you're okay. But if you're out of that, then that's when they recommend some kind of like water management strategy. I need to create another meeting with them and probably with some other consultants, here within the state, because we're all being schooled on the new approach. And then come back to the planning group when I have more information, because it's up to the planning group members to determine what that line in the sand is. And we've always just taken the AWWA's approach, which was a 10%. So if that's no longer the approach for AWWA, I need to determine what is, and then let the planning group decide if that's, the path forward we want to stick with. But for the purpose of this meeting, I was just letting the group know that that section hasn't been updated quite yet. It's in the works, but everything else has, along with the Chapter 2 updates, which are specific to population and water demand, which we've spent lots of meetings hashing over our population and water demand. I will say that I took the gentleman out at UTIP who sent a letter to Annette and Peggy saying the planning group, after approving their, TW revised population, still is not happy with those projections, and here's why. I took all that information and I put it in our chapter 2. As I said I would at the time, I think it's important for the board and others to see, why we believe that the population in our counties aren't being accurately reflected by whatever the TDUBS, data was. Even when we did our revised national undercount, it still didn't get to where we felt like was currently happening, so I included all that good language in the chapter. Very, very excited to see, what kind of feedback you guys may have as you read through those 2 chapters.
Jennifer, is that on page 4 of chapter 2? Is that what I'm looking at here?
Let me pull up my chapter 2 real quick because I didn't print. And kind of point you to where that language came into play. Because I basically left his letter intact and found a home for it in our chapter. And yes, so it starts, all right. I believe we start down at 2.5 going into 2.6.
Okay.
Where he's listing out the growth in Hudspeth, and he's listing out the growth in Culberson and Presidio, and has an explanation for Brewster, Jeff Davis, and Terrell County. I think that sits under our section 2.1.2. And that language came from the letter that he submitted to the planning group via the COG. So prior to that section, we have some information around the methodology. What did the board start us off with? And then what did the planning group decide to do in their approach for revising that data, taking into account the national undercount and then a heavy survey process where we actually got connection numbers back from entities. And we did a population projection revision request. I don't know if you guys remember that. We submitted it to the board.
Yes.
They came back and approved, all but one. And they hit a middle row with us on that one that they had some questions around. So then after that write-up, I go ahead and justify how, okay, so the planning group did approve that to include our revision, but we're still, in a disagreement on what those projections ought to be. And here's some data to back, where the planning group fell with their opinions. So yeah, so both chapters at this point have been updated as far as I can take it. Friesa Nichols has been a big critical part in the update around surface water, conversation around, the Rio Grande and water rights. And we've got a few emails still out. I know Scott and I are working on getting some updates back. But at this point, it's open for feedback from the planning group members as you review it. Please just email, myself, Crystal, John, and we want to be able to take, the feedback that you'll have after you've had a chance to read through it and implement it into the chapters. This is your plan. I've ran it as far down the field as I can, minus a few email responses to folks where I'm asking specifics. And now that I've got some good connections, Peggy, thank you. I think I saw your emails coming in with some contact information. I'll be able to go back into some of those paragraphs and reach out to folks where I think we haven't had good representation before and see if we can't get some updates to other sections of those 2 chapters. And Scott, that's pretty much all that I'll be presenting at the general meeting. No action needed. It's just a preliminary, draft ready for the planning group members review and update. What we'll bring at the next meeting will be the draft chapters 3 and 4. So you can see that the chapters are starting to come out rapid fire. We don't want to fall behind. So we'll take some time to focus on chapters 1 and 2, and then you'll be tasked with reviewing 3 and 4. And then we get into our chapter 5, which is that water management strategy development, and that pretty much absorbs our time for about a year.
Very good. Thank you, Jennifer. So I think it
Yep.
is important that she's giving her update of the plan. It is a structured plan. All 16 regions across the state have the same chapters. And so she's just responding to the requirements of the state. And I think everybody, especially the new people, it'll be good for them to hear what is actually in the plan. And we're constructing the next plan for 2026. So it's a pretty exciting time. And we look like we have lots of new interest in our plan. So Jennifer will highlight a little more detail this afternoon at our full meeting starts at what time?
1:30.
1:30?
No, 1 o'clock.
Oh, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock Mountain.
1 o'clock Mountain Time. So which is about an hour and 10 minutes away.
Lunch
So
break.
do we have any other, yes. Do we have anything else to say in our executive meeting?
Jennifer, have you thought about future meeting requirements for the rest of the year that we're going to need to do to make sure you meet all the suspenses you can meet or you need to meet?
Yeah, so our cadence has been pretty much every quarter, right? Every 3 months we're meeting. But when we hit the water management strategy development section, I think I take some liberty in making it a little more frequent because there's just so much information inside that scope item that needs the planning group's input. So I haven't, to answer your question, I guess I haven't looked that far out to really map out because there's some flexibility in how far can the consultants get with some of that work. That work is dictated by the responses I'm getting. You know, if I don't get any participants responding to me, it makes it really hard for me to come to the planning group to report on anything. So to Scott's point, I'm very excited that our group is growing. We've got some interest. I'm going to capitalize on that and see if we can't, make some good headway in the updates to our water projects and any new projects that need to come on. So I think our next meeting would honestly be another 3 months from now. So this is July, so sometime early September. And that allows me to kind of collect good information on each of the strategies. We had over 70 some strategies in our previous plan. Sounds to me like some of those need to drop off and there's quite a few new ones that need to come on. So I'd like to spend, between now and the next meeting, time with the representatives to those projects and also to the water utilities and the cities and really have some good discussion around what have we had historically, what needs to change, what new stuff needs to come on, and then be able to present where we're at with that work early September.
I just want to make sure we meet often enough to not put you in a crunch ever.
Yeah. Hey, we did a crunch, so I know this team is solid on if we were in another line, we could survive it. But no, I think outside of that transition, we're fine. Yeah, with our timing.
So Labor Day is first week in September, so maybe second week in September?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I had a question. Jennifer, when are chapters 1 and 2 due? So when do what's our time frame for getting these comments back to you before, like, do we have to vote on something today or can we do that in September?
Yep. We do not need to vote on anything today. Technically, the entire plan is not due back to the board until March of 2025. So that is our drop dead deadline that each chapter has to be finalized and approved by the planning group. I have taken it in small chunks. I think historically we've always paced ourselves with here's 1 and 2, it's out for review and feedback at this meeting. We could agree that all feedback needs to be back to me prior to the next meeting in September, so that come September, what we post in advance of the meeting is to include all feedback and revision. So it's kind of our final chapter 1 and 2, and then we adopt it at our September meeting. I'd love that, because then that kind of closes the book on those 2 chapters, because we will be looking at draft chapter 3 and draft chapter 4 at the September meeting, in addition to whatever survey work and feedback I'm getting on our water management strategy development. So to not get, caught in that avalanche, if we close out certain chapters as we go, our IPP, which will have all those chapters, will be ready well in advance of our March 2025 deadline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very helpful for John, Crystal, and I.
So Jennifer, do you have maybe, we're through with 6, 7, and 8 then?
Yes, I do have a slideshow that will walk the general members, the general meeting through all that, but high level for the purposes of the executive committee members, just the call out to the new precipitation data, and still waiting to work with the board on the water loss audit data. Other than that, your chapters 1 and 2 have a great deal of redline revisions made to them that need your review and input, and nothing needs to be voted on at this time.
So we ready for number 9?
Jennifer, we're going to have the benefit of several new attendees at the general meeting when you go over this material. I think it's helpful, just as someone that's been on this for 20 years or so, to explain what an incredible sequence of events occurs every 5 years with this group, that we're at the end. This is kind of the most exciting period, in my opinion. Every 5 years, we get to this point where we're about to give birth to a new report. And so I'd like you to kind of focus on your beautiful flow chart, and explain in a little bit more detail to some of the newbies how this all works, especially interfacing with you on this.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. The other thing I'd add, because we've done it in the past for Region E when we've had an influx of new members, is we've held a regional water planning one-on-one, 101 kind of discussion. And we did it, Teresa, I can't remember if we did it before the general meeting, like sandwiched between the executive committee and the general, or if we held it on a different day. But I have a presentation that helps new members to the group understand what is regional water planning, why are we asked to do it, what does it take, who are the invested, stakeholders in these groups, what do they represent, and then what is that, process that we take in those 5 years to develop the regional water plan and then the state plan, right? So it's a lot of information. I can try to be concise about that, in our general meeting. But I think it might benefit the new members to just have, we could even do, Peggy, like a virtual with new members and myself. It doesn't have to interfere with a regional water planning group meeting, and just give them the opportunity to kind of sit through that material and then ask questions, because it is a lot to take in when you're coming in mid-cycle, and we are in the middle and we are ramping up. So that's the exciting part that I think you've talked to, but it's also like drinking from the fire hose if you're new.
Right. I think before it was done like in the morning on a day when we didn't have executive committee meeting. So I think you had like the morning to do all that, and then in the afternoon we had a meeting.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I've updated that slide deck for another reason, because it's asked, across the state, there's new members joining planning groups all the time, and someone got wind that I created a slide deck, and they asked me to be the.
Can we borrow that?
Yeah, well, they actually wanted me to present on it. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Region E is shining in other areas of the state, unbeknownst to you guys.
Did you do it?
I did, and they were very, very thankful. Yeah, and then the neat thing is it exposes me to questions that maybe otherwise aren't asked when you're doing a quick summary in a planning group meeting. Our new members don't often feel real comfortable in that setting to speak up because they're new. So that that separate meeting allows them to really connect with me and ask whatever they want. And I tell them there are no dumb questions because we continue to learn every day, and the board's changing, their guidance and methodology between, planning cycles. So, so consider that as something, maybe we do for our new members.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, it is. And that was one of my questions is, whether you're voting or non-voting members, are you able to review the plan and comment on it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, public is
Anybody
too.
can. Public
Oh,
can.
there you go.
Anybody can,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's a
And
public
it's
document.
out there for them to review too.
Got it. Thank you.
That's why we changed the name of the Conchas River from Mexican River to the Conchas.
Mm-hmm.
Sensitivity.
Yeah, I remember that.
Are we on item 9, David?
I don't know. Jennifer, do you have something else you want to talk about for item 9?
Okay, item 9 kind of puts us on the back end of our PowerPoint presentation. So the next steps have been starting the survey process. So I have taken the liberty to create an Excel sheet that will help some folks in-house and I track who we're surveying, what the questionnaire is asking for, when did they respond back, and logging those responses. And that is helping me to begin the development of our Chapter 5, which is solely around water management, projects and strategies. So we've been, starting our survey work there. We've also begun collecting our drought contingency plans. So that's one thing I'll mention at the general meeting is if you've updated your drought contingency plan, I would really appreciate a copy of it because we need updated drought contingency plans in order to develop Chapter 7, which is our drought chapter. Don't know if you remember, but in the last cycle, it actually may have been in 2011. 2016's plan, Chapter 7 didn't exist, and it was a new requirement at the time, and the board had minimal guidance around that, and we did a bang-up job. I think we were with LBG Guyton at that time, and Region E did a bang-up job on their Chapter 7, and it kind of became an example of what that drought chapter should look like for other regions in the state. So there's not a lot that we have to do to update that because it was so comprehensive to start, but an area that does require updating is reviewing each of the DCPs that come in from these entities and combing through, what are their drought triggers, what are the drought stage requirements and criteria, and making sure that our tables reflect all that new information. And as you know, we continue to be in a drought-like situation. And so I know folks are taking a lot of time to update their drought contingency plans. So that will be a request. And then, like I said, we're moving on to Chapters 3 and 4, just updating our water supply chapter, which is Chapter 3, and our water needs analysis, which is Chapter 4. And those draft chapters will be out in September for your review. So that's kind of next step.
Jennifer?
Uh-huh.
Did you, is there a water loss section? I know that the El Paso Water has to prepare a water loss audit or something for the state. Is that a requirement of the state water plan? They have the various entities, other towns. Is that something that's a requirement? I know we have the drought contingency requirement. But what about water loss audits or reports? Is that part of the document?
Yep. So in your Chapter 1, Section 1.9 is our water loss audit discussion. And so what we do in that section is we try to summarize what came out of entities submitting their water loss audit reports to the state, right? It's not necessarily a requirement of the regional water plan, but let me take that back. You guys are held to a requirement of submitting an updated water loss audit report, to your point, Scott. Then, as your consultant, we go and look at those water loss audit reports, and we put information together in chapter 1. For us, it's section 1.9 to reflect what got submitted and reported. So yeah, that was the section I was talking to y'all about where the 10% water loss is no longer the AWWA's standard. So I need to work with AWWA and the department at the Water Development Board to better understand what the trigger is for when they say, okay, now this system is above the normal, water loss. But yeah, if you want to review section 1.9, Scott, I'd really like to kind of expand. It's a one-pager, and I think there's more information out there than that. So if you have some information you want to be included in that section, just connect with me, after the meeting, whenever.
Yes, one of my thoughts about that is that when you talk about water loss, it's real easy to say that you've got a pipe that's burst and it's leaking out and spraying water. But there's also the other side of that, and it's calibration of flow meters, accuracy. Might even be like the baud rate, the reporting interval of your electronic flow meter, and that could lead to inaccuracies. And I would just like to see that the language in your water loss section isn't just about a hole in a pipe, but yet it could be calibration.
Okay, so I'm going to be brutally honest with y'all. Historically, it's just been a hole in a pipe, and that is why this whole section needs an update. So
yes,
between what the Water Development Board can help me better understand about what that new line in the sand is and what you want to include, as language in addition to a hole in the pipe, we have work we need to do in updating section 1.9.
And oh, one other comment, Jennifer. It's so easy when everyone in the room is named David. So, Jennifer. So anyway, it was helpful. I have two Davids in both
ears.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I wasn't sure if I should stop talking so you could speak.
So water loss, like you grabbed on the hole in the pipe, but it's also meaning for irrigation districts is your canal leaking. And one of the remedies of fixing water loss is lining canals.
Right.
Yep. We do talk about that.
Which comes as a groundwater person, comes to the detriment of the freshwater recharge of your aquifer. So there is you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but I think if we explain that you line it, but yet this means no more leakage to your aquifer. It's not leaking or losing water on the surface water side, but those losses support fresh groundwater recharge.
Yes,
and ultimately your groundwater resource can turn to really poor quality if you don't have this systematic fresh leakage. But that's I think just trying to be accurate in an informative document, I think that would be a good thing to say.
Yes, I agree. And something we've recommended in the past, and maybe we need to consider it again, is you guys can form internal correspondence with one another. So if you and the Davids would like to start on some kind of write-up, pass it amongst yourselves to see if there's anything more you want to add, how best you want to say it, and then send that to me when you're ready. I'll include it in our water loss audit discussion to help build, that section so it's more comprehensive. Right now, it's pretty lean with what we've been carrying in past plans.
Yeah, so I'm hearing some good things about this next plan. Some more climate info. We have the Lower Valley better represented. Good contacts from the electric company right behind me.
Population projections.
Population projections. What about Fort Bliss? That's always been kind of a point of we try to strengthen our connection and getting better info. How do you feel like our Fort Bliss contacts are?
Yes, so this year, Scott was able to connect me with a gentleman out at Fort Bliss. His name escapes me right now.
Gilbert Mesa?
Yes, Yes.
Okay.
And anytime
Yes.
I have a question or send him an email, he responds within 30 minutes. It's been really amazing because that's been an area where it's just crickets. I don't know if it's, they don't want us to know much about their,
Yeah.
system or
They-
supply, but he's
Yeah,
been
they
on
used
it.
Yeah, it was very frustrating for us in previous plans because they acted like it's a national security secret. They can't say that
Yeah.
the base is growing, and they made it sound like it changes with each election. And
Dave Hall's never told you anything he's never done over there.
Anything I have done either.
so anyway,
And
I
not only
always-
was he very receptive to my email, but he then connected
Been
with
gone for too
one of
long.
the accountants at El Paso Water
13 years ago.
on billing because his Excel sheet had a discrepancy he felt, so he connected with El Paso Water to just clear that up and then got back to me. So, I mean, he's taking additional steps that I've, never seen that kind of participation from Fort Bliss before. So that was very encouraging.
And this is kind of, I hope it's not too much in the weeds, Jennifer, but the outlying areas of Fort Bliss, like the McGregor Range Camp, how they get water. And just a sentence or two about Fort Bliss. Treating this whole process as an updated resource for the borderland region.
Okay.
So how does Fort Bliss get their water? Not just the post, there's East Bliss and the old
Yes.
base, but then there's McGregor Range Camp, and then there's Dona Ana Range Camp. And I think Gilbert Mesa can help provide that, so that if I have questions or I don't want to answer somebody's question, I said, just go to this document. It's been researched and we're updating all kinds of information.
Okay, that's a good point. I don't have that yet in our, that would be chapter 3. So that's just timely, considering we're working on that draft now to have out to you for review in September. So I'll connect with Gilbert, and maybe John Albright and Crystal on the call can help me, get that section updated.
Jennifer, the reason that this is so important, I think Scott's going to agree with this, and Dave Hall too. Fort Bliss has tripled in size since the last edition of our plan. When the first armored came in, it was around 30,000. Now it's up to about 90,000. It's huge,
Okay.
huge.
I think we
And
do mention in our chapter 1, the growth there that wasn't really represented well with some of the board's, original projections. But I need to go back and kind of revisit what we say exactly in chapter 2, and there might be room there for Gilbert Mesa to help me speak more elaborately around that growth in Fort Bliss.
I'd like to be in that conversation.
Okay.
I think it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say about their growth, and hope he doesn't have to shoot me. So often.
Okay, I'm
that's the-
taking notes.
Yeah, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, right, David? That's what you learned.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
it was always a good excuse anyway.
right. Okay, so are we ready for the?
Move for adjournment?
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask a question. I can't find it. I've been looking for it for about 10 minutes now. It seems to me that I saw a letter that went to somebody here, and I don't know if it went to Scott or who it went to, the board, to us, about reuse. And it seems, was there a letter from the board that came in that talked about recycled water or reuse or something like that, that was calling our attention to some issue?
So
Do you-
let me check, because the board has
I-
sent a handful.
I can't find anything. It seems like I read that, but I can't find it right now. And I wanted to bring that up and just ask you if you'd seen that, but it seemed like it addressed reuse water or water that was processed and put back into the system. Like one of our plants does with sewage, the Northeast plant, I guess. And
It doesn't put it in the system, it puts it, it re-injects it.
Well, it does there.
Yeah.
They re-inject there, but I can't find it, and I'm a little frustrated that I can't find it, but otherwise I would be more specific on what I'm asking.
Well, I know that they sent out some information around their updated virtual water supply needs surplus map. And there was another document that came out on supporting documentation, including local water supply plans that were submitted to justify their revision requests. That might be a good question for the general, because don't we have Elizabeth McCoy joining us? Okay, and she's going to represent the Water Development Board. But I could also ask Crystal or John Albright. They're on the call with us from Friesa Nichols. Did you guys see anything come through from the Water Development Board pertaining to reuse?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah.
I'm keep looking, but I thought I brought it with me and I can't find it in my package, so.
Okay.
Get with it.
Yeah, let me know if you find something. I certainly don't want to overlook an email from them, and I'll do some extra digging as well.
All right.
And we can ask Elizabeth at our general meeting. Okay. I think that's all we've got, Scott. I just, again, am excited that every time we do a regional water plan, we are not just cut and copying the old plan. It continues to evolve and grow. And currently there are a lot of things changing in Region E. And so I'm really happy that there's some presentation or representation that we haven't had in past plans. So lots of new good materials going to be coming in on your draft chapters with those red lines. So I do highly recommend taking time to read it carefully and then just connect with me if you've got revisions requests that you want to see in the plan, and I'll do that to the master copy that we're holding.
Okay. Other than that, anything else? Hearing none from the Daves?
I'll second my motion.
The Daves? Wait, Dave's
Had a motion to adjourn.
Dave had a motion and seconded by Dave. Want to put that in the record.
The Dave's had it.
Dave's did it.
Dave did it.
Dave did it.
Dave squared.
He did it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you all in about 45 minutes.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Scott, that Gilbert Mason he's talking about?
Yeah.
He's one of my best friends
Yes.
years ago. He's a great civil engineer.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really great
Oh,
civil
yeah.
engineer.
We've become.
Do you work with Gilbert?
I would say that we're colleagues, that he'll call me and ask me